Should have. The muscles he'd earned tilling the fields were no less impressive than those of a soldier, and probably better than any prince would earn seated upon a throne. Truth was, he was prettier than I, and the better part of a decade younger. His age had worried me when Father brought him home last fall. I should have remembered how shrewd my father was. Only an idiot could have found fault with Darren, and I hope I've never been that, or at least not very often. "Aren, my lass?" Darren asked after a moment. I realized he'd stopped in front of me some time ago, and I'd been staring at him without speaking. I started to say something light and funny, something to let him know it was shyness, not moodiness, that I felt. But the words stopped in my throat. A familiar chill settled into my stomach. Not now, I thought desperately. I reached out to his normalcy and warmth, gripping the cloth of his pant leg, and hoped for the feeling to pass. When I closed my eyes against dizziness, I saw a winter lily, scarlet flower drooping and edged with brown, bobbing as something dripped on it. As an explanation of the dread feeling that choked me, it was a complete failure. Most of my visions were like that. Later, after whatever event the sight had warned of took place, I could nod my head to myself and say, "Oh, that's what it meant." Not very useful. If I had to be stricken with magic, I would rather have had something like Graham's talent for healing, or my brother's knack for finding things, especially because the consequences of having magic were so deadly. My brother had died for his when I was 13. He'd been in town with Father, trading fresh milk for leather to mend a harness, when Lord Moresh's bloodmage saw him and spoke my brother's death sentence. Quillier had been 15, and he'd had a day to choose whether he would apprentice to the bloodmage or refuse and be put to death. If he'd chosen to become a bloodmage, he'd have learned to kill and torture for power. After a while, he'd have begun to go insane, as all the mages did in the end. Some immediately, some after years of a gradual decline into madness. He'd picked death, but not one delivered by the bloodmage. The bloodmages would have used his death, his dead body, to power their magics. So my brother walked into the middle of a snowstorm and found a place where his body would be safely hidden for 3 days, enough time to ensure the bloodmage had no power from him. I couldn't tell Darren I had the sight, though I'd had all winter to do it. Caution learned so harshly would not drop for me after a few months of exchanged confidences and growing love. After a night of being man and wife, I would have trusted him with my life, but I couldn't risk losing the growing softness in his eyes when he looked at me. Looking into his eyes, I couldn't tell him what I'd seen. "Aren?" he asked, concerned. "Is something wrong?" No, just be careful." I released his leg and stepped back. I hugged myself as if it would help keep my mouth from telling him everything. I wrestled with my conscience, finally deciding that if whatever happened was catastrophic, I would tell him about the sight, punishment for being too selfish to tell him now. He grinned at me, not seeing the seriousness of my warning. "I'll keep my feet out from under the plowshares and be back at dusk after a dangerous day of plowing fields with your father and Column." The warmth in his eyes kept his speech from being patronizing. He took my words as an expression of concern, perhaps the implied apology for my moodiness this morning that I'd meant to give him when I'd called him over. Well, my foreseeing was not exact, predicting small harms as well as great. Perhaps someone would twist an ankle today, or cut themselves on a sharp rock. Maybe it would rain.